And a good football Friday. Eagles fans, appreciate you streaming in with us as we end OTAs. Now the long wait begins before they actually report to camp. But we'll be here for you every day like we are today. And we are Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen. Who did you sardine in next to yesterday in the bubble, Johnny Mac?
Well, a lot of different people. Probably the best ranging from Breland Moore to the worst, Bob Groats, probably.
When in doubt, take a growth shot. That's always a smart move on your part. So yeah, you find out yesterday that the Eagles are going to practice, but they're going to practice in the bubble because air quality isn't what it's supposed to be because of the wildfires from Canada. 89 guys in it. Well, no, not really, because they had a bunch of veterans that didn't show up. So 80 guys, somewhere thereabouts, squeezing into the bubble. They accomplished anything yesterday during that short period of time you were allowed to watch?
Yeah, man, 55 minutes, baby. Most of it individual work, fundamentals, and that's the more important part. Then they finished up with some 7-on-7s, but that's what we got. 55 and 45. So quick math says that's 100 minutes of what we got to see of this sort of first incarnation of the Philadelphia Eagles in 2023. And hey, it's not a lot. But it is what it is. And yesterday, a lot of guys were not there. And most of the sort of like the maintenance days back in last year during practice. I mean, any star was probably not doing anything yesterday with the exception of Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith.
The pretty important guy did actually practice under center, or I don't even know what they run under center or everything out of the shotgun snap. But that quarterback guy takes doesn't take days off.
Quarterbacks are different. They are. They get paid what they get paid. More quarterbacks are like Jalen Hurts than they are Aaron Rodgers, who, for years didn't show up in Green Bay, but he's showing up with the Jets, because it's his first year there. I'll probably be the last time you see that. But quarterback's a little bit different. But everybody else, the Kelseys, the Coxes, the Grahams, the Lanes, the Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, if I mentioned James Bradbury, Darius Slay, none of them participated. And those guys don't need that work. So it's not that big of a deal.
It isn't, because it's been an ongoing trend for a couple of years now that the veteran guys just don't take part. They are given downtime. And we kind of talked about this yesterday on the show about how you handle it, putting the toothpaste back into the tube if they decide, we need to practice more. And there were guys that were going to be given downtime just because that's where the Eagles do things. There wasn't any rumblings or grumblings from any of the young guys. Yeah, how come we're out here? How come we're sardined into the bubble? That wasn't a problem or an issue, was it?
No. It kind of takes care of itself, because I always joke, the nature of voluntary work. Well, it's voluntary for some people. It's not voluntary for others. And it really does. It takes care of itself, because, either if you're that unaware to think that you've got the same cachet as Jason Kelce as a first or second year player, and that, Jason Kelce is in here, I shouldn't have to do this. I mean, you're not going to make it. Bottom line. So I think a lot of that kind of, as I said, takes care of itself. If you're a bubble player, so to speak, it's not voluntary. I mean, you got to be there, and you got to try to open up the coach's eyes and all that kind of stuff. And it might not be fair, but Jimmy Johnson had a great quote about that back in the day. He said, when he was coach of the Cowboys with all those star players, said, "I'll treat you all fairly, but I'm not going to treat you all equally." And you got to defer to the Emmitt Smiths and the Michael Irvins and the Troy Aikmans of the world. So that's just realistic, is what that is.
Standard operating procedure around the NFL. Understood and agreed. All right. So knew ahead of time after the lengthy, arduous 55-minute practice. that you were going to get a chance to talk to some of the Philadelphia Eagles. Unlike previous in this offseason, you knew well ahead of time who was coming your way. That would be the head coach and the quarterback. Let's start with Jalen. I'd like to say he's well rehearsed, that he knows what's coming and he knows what his answers are going to be. But I don't even believe that. I believe he's just being himself when he gets with you guys. This guy is just a coach's dream because he answers everything correctly. He doesn't say anything foolish. He doesn't expand and get himself into any trouble. No, he gives you an acceptable answer, not a wide-ranging answer, but an acceptable answer. And it's exactly what he should be saying. This guy is just too good to be true. If you're in Howie Roseman, Jeff Flory, watch him back after he has his session, you go, damn, that's why we paid him $250 million. He does nothing but put the organization in a good light.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he's always on point. It's pretty impressive. That's why we always talk about his maturity in the fact. And, Boston Scott was talking about it earlier this week and, made a funny little line. Like sometimes he's got to remind himself that Jalen's that he's older than Jalen because, I mean, he is so mature and you rarely see that with people that young. And I think it does come back to, and I was asking him about, Nick had mentioned how coachable he was and he doesn't mind hard coaching, tough coaching, whatever you want to call it. I think it goes back to the fact that he was a coach's kid and he's used to it. Some people aren't used to it and they don't want to hear the negative and, they don't want to be coached up and they want to be told they're great. And he's not like that. And, $255 million or $2 million like last year, he wants to be told what he needs to work on. And that's rare. That is rare. And a lot of coaches' kids have that because they've grown up with it and they're used to it. And other people aren't. Because if you're in the NFL, Jody, you're good. And you've been good throughout your life. Yep. You were great in high school. To play college football, the percentage of kids that play high school football and go play college football is minuscule. And then it becomes even more minuscule. So your entire life growing up, you're pretty much a star if you're even on the NFL's radar. And then all of a sudden you get to the NFL and you got these guys riding your you-know-what, and some guys don't take that well. And Jalen's a star who acts like, he's the kid who doesn't have a scholarship because he's used to it from his father. And Nick really appreciates it because he constantly talks about it. So you don't have to worry about, like, he threw interceptions in 2 out of 3 plays. So, the fans were up in roars. Like, why are you reporting that? Well, we're reporting that because we're in the practice and that's what happened. It's a factual statement. Now, they'll go back and watch that film and Nick will be able to say, all right, this is the issue. This is, we got to improve on that. And Jalen, not a blip on the radar. So, it's really impressive to see. And I've been talking about this from day one. I always say it was opposite, Jody. It's like a 180. Typically we talk about, if a top 10 pick. So if you look at this year and all the guys, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, whoever you like, Anthony Richardson, even Will Levis, they all have the talent to play in the NFL. But you're always worried about the intangibles. Do they have the acumen to do it? Do you have the work ethic to do it? Do you need to are you going to do everything to become a star at the position in the NFL level? It was like the opposite with Jalen. We didn't even worry about the intangibles. We're like, all right, does he have the skill set to perform at the high level? Turns out he does. It's kind of weird. It's kind of the opposite of what it usually is.
And my favorite quote from Jalen yesterday was in talking about trying to get better, trying to improve every day. We've heard it before, but you take it to heart every time he says it. He never used this line yesterday. And as far as my weaknesses go, yeah, I'll keep that to myself.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
funny line. Yeah, you have to love the mindset of the $250 million contract the Eagles have. All right, Nick Sirianni also got a chance to talk to you guys yesterday. He was his usual Nick self, but I thought he went out of his way to sing the praises of one player, and it's a guy we've talked about
Yeah,
here
it's
on
your
Birds
guy. He's talking about you.
365.
He's talking to you, Jody. He's talking to
Well,
you.
all right, Nick, if you got to talk directly to me, I hear you. Yeah, you don't change my opinion a little bit. I don't care how hard Quez Watkins is working. He's a less than average number 3 wide receiver in the league for me. I'd like to see the Eagles improve on that position. I get it. Their 1-2 punch is as good, arguably the best in all of football. So how important is your third wide receiver? Not a lot until number 1 or number 2 go down. And last year, guess what? Number 1 and number 2 never went down. And if you're an Eagle fan, you're hoping this year number 1 and number 2 never go down. And then that'll be great. And then you don't have to sweat Quez all that much. But God forbid, the high ankle sprain to Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown week 1 in the season, or more importantly, like week 6 in the season, when they're starting to hit that gauntlet of very good teams in the middle of the year. Yeah, I'm going to worry about it. I'm glad to hear from Coach Sirianni that Quez has got the good attitude going. I'm here to prove you idiots wrong. Me. Fine. That's good. I'm glad to hear it, Quez. I'm glad you got your mind straight and you're ready to go. Yeah, it doesn't change my opinion a little bit that that's still a position that the Eagles, if they can, should be looking to upgrade. And Nick was specifically asked about DeAndre Hopkins. Not that he'd give the info away. He wouldn't say anything anyway, but he did say, yeah, we're always looking at all play. And he moved on from pretty damn quickly, which means those of you who are clinging to the hope that DeAndre Hopkins is coming here, I'm telling you right now, it's not happening, is it, John?
No, the only way it happens is, so many things have to fall into place for that to happen. One, it's not that out of the realm of possibility. Like the Eagles know it would be an upgrade. So from that standpoint, but now you have reports he's going to visit with Tennessee. Now New England comes out this morning. Teams that are looking for a receiver for a bigger role, they're going to give him more money. But, if all that stuff dries up and everyone says, well, you know what? DeAndre Hopkins has lost it, whatever. And they believe it and the money's not there. And, what is the percentage of that?
Yeah.
1%. Somebody's going to give
not
me
zero,
something.
yes, but 1 is the number. I agree wholeheartedly with you, John.
So, if all doors are closed and then it comes down to, well, let me go ring shop, let me go to the best potential situation to try to get a Super Bowl championship. And even that, you would have to, from his perspective, it's probably a better way to say, all right, let me go prove myself where I can have a bigger opportunity to play so I can get back on the market next year and prove that I'm still that guy. And then I get another big contract. So the window, the door or the window for it to happen here is really, really small. I mean, really small. And yeah, it's not going to happen. And, but can they improve? Look, and this is what's weird about, and this is why Nick Sirianni's got to say things the way he says things. He's not in charge of the roster. So if Howie Roseman is looking at it and saying, Nick jumped on his sword for Quez Watkins yesterday, went through all that because he talked before practice. Then he had an opportunity to make a play in practice, perfect throw down the field. Didn't get his head around in time, didn't track the ball. It was very Nelson Aguilar-like, was in position to make the play, didn't make the play. Right after the head coach just went out of his way to defend him, didn't make the play. Now it's one play in June. Who cares? I agree with that from a large perspective, but it's just an example. And by the way, Nelson, Yeah, I don't want to make that comparison because Nelson Aguilar had tremendous, it was a first round pick, had tremendous physical gifts, was always open, just couldn't catch the football consistently. Quez isn't in his league, but it reminded me of Nelson because it was down the field. He didn't get his head around quickly enough, couldn't track the football, and it was a play to be made just like the Super Bowl, and he didn't make the play. Can they get better at that position? Yes. Is it up to Nick Sirianni to find that better player? No. Is Howie Roseman going to decide we have to get better at that position? Maybe, but it's not going to be DeAndre Hopkins.
Couple of things before we get in our first break and get a new contributor to the show. Jeff Knox from InsideTheEagles.com is going to jump in with us. Number one, Quez is not in Nelson Aguilar's category.
No, I just said that.
I'm repeating it for emphasis. Then that tells you where Quez Watkins is overall. If he's not even in Nelson Aguilar's category, yeah, that's not surprising. He didn't make the one big play he had to make yesterday. Number two, where I will disagree with you on DeAndre Hopkins is you are right if he's certainly looking at a one-year deal, prove it, but he's not going to prove it here with the Eagles because he's going to be number 3.
Yeah.
That he's going to go somewhere else where the money is short, but in the same ballpark, he will emphasize, my opinion here, he will emphasize targets over ring possibility. I think he will go where, number one, he's going to go where the money is. Number two, he's going to go where they're going to throw him the ball. Number 3, if he's got to get that far down the list, will be, well, while I'm at it, let me see if I can bring up a Super Bowl ring. That's how the Eagles come into this conversation. Otherwise, they're not in it. And number 4, if Quez Watkins, you don't want to overemphasize what he did or didn't do on one play. The interceptions that Christian Ellis has been coming up with have certainly rocketed up the attention on him because he's made a couple of picks in these practices or workouts or whatever you want to call them, training exercises the Eagles have if they're not truly practices because they're not 11 on 11. Sometimes one play can actually move the needle for a player a little bit, like it seems it has for Christian Ellis. That's just one of the guys we'll talk about with our first and next guest. First time we've had him on the show. I've been reading him forever. Jeffrey Knox at InsideTheEagles.com joins us next here on Birds 365.